Hello. Today we are going to study about BEC. That is BEC 111, a unit in microeconomics. Economics refers to the study of the allocation of resources, study of the allocation of scarce resources to meet unlimited human wants. It refers to the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce which of alternative uses. Adam Smith, in his time, defined economics as an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth in the nation. Jean Baptiste defined economics as the science of production, distribution, and consumption. It refers to a social science concerned with efficient use of scarce resources to achieve maximum satisfaction of human wants. You could try this question: is economics a science or an art? If you say that it is both an art and a science, then you're gonna get points to affirm that. If you say it is a science, well and good, you're gonna affirm your decision. If you say it is an art, then well and good, it might be true. Go check it out. If I have already defined economics, now I can define microeconomics. Microeconomics, it is the study of small economic units like individuals, for example, farms and industries. Macroeconomics, it is the study of the large economy as a whole. You also have trade tariffs, so you can check that out. Economics is a social science because it is based on facts and possible explanations of causes, effects, relationships, if possible. The rational areas means that the individuals pursue actions that will enable them to achieve satisfaction. Economics is divided into two. We have macroeconomics and we have microeconomics. I already defined what macro is and what microeconomics is, but I'm gonna pardon that. Microeconomics refers to the scientific study of individual economic units, which can include individual household, farms, or industries. It looks at the price of a specific product, number of workers employed by a specific firm, government, or firms. Macroeconomics refers to the scientific study of economics as a whole. So it does not just measure on individual household, farms. Economics often distinguish an economic phenomena either in a positive aspect and normative aspect. We shall discuss on the positive aspect and the normative aspect later. So now let's check factors of production. In order to produce a good or a service, an economy needs to have resources. The larger the amount of resources an economy has, the larger the amount of goods that the economy produces. Obviously, with quite a lot of resources, you're gonna produce quite a lot of goods. Resources can be classified into four categories. We have land, labor, capital, enterprise. If it's a chance that you happen to learn business in high school, then you already know these factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, enterprise. Enterprise, if it is an ability, willingness to take risks. This is what you used to call entrepreneurship in high school. Enterprise refers to the ability and willingness to take risks. Capital refers to the goods that are produced for use in the production of other goods. Labor refers to the physical and mental effort. Who does not know how to define labor? Anyway, it refers to the physical and mental effort that people put in production of goods and services. Land refers to the gift of nature that are used for production of goods and services. Although resources are limited, human wants are unlimited, and this gives rise to scarcity. Because if everything that you need it's not available, or you're not able to get it, if it is your wants are unlimited and resources that you have are limited, that means there is a lot of things that you will not have on your side and you might need them. That is where scarcity comes in. Scarcity refers to the situation where limited resources are insufficient to produce goods and services to satisfy unlimited human wants. Due to scarcity, the inability to produce all goods and services leads to society to choose what to produce and what not to produce. Now, there is okay, let's go to opportunity cost. Opportunity cost of action is the benefit for a goal by not choosing its best alternative. benefit for a goal by not choosing its best alternative. When a choice is made, an opportunity cost is incurred. Whenever you make a choice, you forgo one thing to get the best alternative, and that's where opportunity cost is incurred. Once you make a choice, an opportunity cost is incurred. I hope that is clear. So now we can move to production and possibility curve. That is what we call a PPC curve. PPC shows all the possible combinations of goods, let's say 2, that can be produced in an economy when resources are full and efficiently employed given a state of technology, assuming the economy can produce 2 goods. I have given you an example of a curve where we have clothes and food. Then you can now see the movement and shift in the PPC. I will not take much time in that curve as it is explained. Now let's move to economic efficiency. The PPC curve shows all the possible combination. It reflects scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. Although the points in the PPC are attained, the points in the PPC, they are attained, and the points outside, they are not attainable. The points inside the PPC are attained, and the points outside are not attainable. That is about explaining the economic efficiency in those PPC curves. Now let's go to movement along the PPC curve in case you did not understand the curve. The PPC is downward sloping. That is what you should understand, that the PPC is always downward sloping. The opportunity cost is reflected by negative diffraction. That is negative diffraction. That is, an increase in one product leads to a decrease in the other product. If one product happens to increase, then the other one obviously will decrease. So in our curve, if clothes increase, then the food will decrease. When the economy moves into taxation, the PPC will not shift. Rather, the economy will move from a point in PPC to a point inside the PPC. We could say from a point outside the PPC to a point inside the PPC. Remember, we said in the PPC it is attainable and outside it's unattainable, or it's not attainable. A decrease in investment expenditure in any economy will not lead for leftward shift of the PPC, rather will cause the PPC to shift outwards at a slower rate as firms are, however, in the amount of new capital falls below the amount. The PPC is concave to the origin. The opportunity cost of producing each good increases as each quantity increases. The opportunity cost of producing each good increases as each quantity increases. Now, let's move to demand and supply. Market. We're just brushing out the subtopics in this unit. So, demand and supply. I guess all of you know how to define a demand. Now, let's define a market. A market is a network or an arrangement that enables buyers and sellers to get information, awareness, and exchange goods and services as resources and respond to market prices. A market is a network or an arrangement that enables buyers and sellers to get information, awareness, and exchange of goods and services as resources and respond to market prices. You could say a market is an arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together. That's gonna be easy. A market is an arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together. It is any arrangement that facilitates the buying, selling of a good and service. Now, prices are determined through the interaction for and demand and supplying for the good. Economists, however, differentiate between 2 types of prices. That is, and those, just for you to know, these types of prices that economists use to differentiate, they do not exist in the market, but they are assumed to exist. So we have money price and relative price. Money price of a good or service, it is the amount of money needed to buy a commodity. Money price, it is the amount of money that you need to buy a certain commodity. Money price is usually equal to actual money of the commodity. So if you are gonna buy a mango and the mango, its money price is 20, then the mango is equal to 20. That is, money price is usually equal to actual money of the commodity. Now, let's define the other type of price, that is relative price. It is the ratio of its money price to the money price of the best money alternative goods. Is usually what you must give up to get 1 unit of a good or service. Suppose 1 kilogram of meat is 400 and you need to use a salon, especially the ladies, which is 1,000. Could you ask yourself, what is the money price of the salon? Or what is the relative price of the salon? I guess you'll get the answer since I defined what is money price and what is the relative price. Now, let's define demand. The relationship between the quantity demanded and the price of goods when all other influences on buying plans are constant. Now, market demand. We also have quantity demand, but let's talk about market demand. It is the willingness of consumers to purchase a particular good or service. The quantity demanded, it is the amount of goods. On market demand. It is the willingness of consumers to purchase a particular good or service. Quantity demanded is the amount of goods, services that people are willing and able to buy during a specific period at a specified time. The quantity demanded of a good or service is a specific amount that consumers are ready to buy at a particular price during a given period of time, assuming that other factors influencing the purchase of goods, services remains constant. We have the law of demand, which states that as the prices of commodities increases, the demand decreases. As the prices of commodities increases, the demand decreases. From the law of demand, the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded is a result of the following. The law of demand is inconsistent with common sense in that people do buy more when prices are less and buy less when prices are high. At any time, each buyer will deliver lesser satisfaction from each additional unit of the product consumed. Income and substitution effect. Income effect indicates that a low price increases the purchasing power of a buyer. Money income thereby enabling a buyer to buy more product than she could buy before. Now, the substitution effect. It suggests or it says that at a lower price, buyers have the incentive to substitute what is a less expensive product for a similar product. I'm going to give you an example so you will check it out. Let's go to change in quantity demanded. This refers to the movement along a fixed demand curve. All of you know about this fixed demand curve. Change in demand. When one or some of the factors influencing demand changes with the price of the goods remaining constant, the demand will change. And the demand curve will shift either leftward or rightward. Now, you're going to ask yourself about factors that determine the change of demand. What is these factors that cause demand? Why does demand happen? Why do we have demand and what causes this demand? These are factors that determine the change in demand. How is going to demand increase or decrease? Personal income or income effect. An increase in income will lead to the demand curve will shift from D0 to D1 as it is explained in the curve, displayed. A decrease in income will lead to QO to QD2. The demand curve will shift from D0 to D2. Change in price of related goods or expectation of the future, taste and preferences, number of buyers in the market. I'm not going to explain those, they are self-explanatory. The factors that determine change in demand, we have personal income, I tried to explain using our curve, change in price of related goods, expectation of the future, taste and preferences. When we talk about taste and preferences, people tend to change what they love, what they want to use, what they want to use now, what they want to use next. So that is where taste and if now I prefer not using coffee, and then I would rather use milk than tomorrow I'm gonna like to use coffee, and that is change of taste and preference. That means if tomorrow I want to do coffee, then I'll buy coffee rather than buying the milk that I use. We have number of buyers in the market. If number of buyers are increased, then obviously demand increases. If number of buyers decrease, then obviously the demand decreases. Now the supply. This is the amount of goods or resources that people are willing and able to sell during a specified period at a specific price. Supply is delivered from a producer's desire to maximize profits. A supply is an expression of the seller's plan or intention, an offer to sell, and not a statement of actual sale. You could ask yourself, what will happen to substitute or to complement a good? Now, the law of supply, it shows a positive relationship between the quantity supplied and price. The law results from the general tendency for a marginal cost of producing a good or service to increase as the quantity produced increases. I will give you an example of a curve. An increase of price from PO to P1 causes an increase of quantity supplied from QO to Q2. That is movement along this curve that I have given you. We already discussed about the causes or the factors that determine the change in demand. Now let's talk about the causes of shift in supply curve. The change in the cost of factors of production. We have change in technology. We have change in prices of related goods. We have expectations about the future. The number of sellers in demand. Remember, these factors are almost opposite or kind of similar to the factors that cause demand. We have also about equilibrium condition. You could research about that. I'm going to discuss mostly about the theoretic part. I will leave out the chapter on elasticity. It will be on our next discussion, but we could talk about a consumer theory. A consumer is an individual or an household composed of one or more individuals. A consumer is an individual or an household composed of one or more individuals. It is assumed to be rational given its income and the market prices of various commodities. In traditional theory, it is assumed that a consumer has full knowledge of all information relevant to his decision. Now, human wants are unlimited and are of different intensities. This means that at the disposal of a man, they are not only scarce, but they have alternative uses. Sometimes you'd rather prefer using one thing rather than using the other. You forgo one to get the other or to choose. The consumer cannot satisfy all his wants. A rational consumer has to choose as to which one has to be satisfied first and what else to be satisfied later. For example, if a man is thirsty, he goes to the market and satisfies his thirst first, in that he will buy water and not tea. The term utility is used to express the satisfaction a consumer derives from the consumption of a good or a service when given income. Economists use a term utility in a peculiar way, and it refers not to the usefulness but to the pleasure and happiness that a person enjoys. The term utility is unfortunate not just because it is a usefulness, but because it makes economic approach to behavior appear more limited than actual way it is. Than the way it is actually. How to measure utility? Now, we have cardinal utility approach. We have utility, which is cardinally measurable. We have marginal utility. Now, that utility which is cardinally measurable is in cardinal utility approach. We have marginal utility. We have diminishing marginal utility. We have independent utility. Let's see. Now, let's talk about cardinal utility. Just brush on that. It is anchored on several assumptions like rationality. A consumer is rational in that he seeks to maximize satisfaction from the minimum income he got, the minimum income he has. Utility is cardinally measurable in that utility can be measured in cardinal numbers. For example, let's say 1, 8, 40. The utility is expressed in marginally cardinal number, which tells us about the preference of a consumer needs. Let's go to marginal utility. Marginal utility of money, it remains constant as per the cardinal approach. It refers to the extra utility derived from the extra unit of a good or service, diminishing marginal utility. Now, it is also assumed that the marginal utility obtained from the assumption of a good, it diminishes continuously as consumption increases. It diminishes continuously as the consumption increases. We have independent utility. According to the cardinal school, the utility which is derived from consumption of a good is the first of that good done. Now, total utility of a basket of goods depends on the quantities of individuals or commodities. If there are n commodities in the bundle with commodities, let's say x1, x2, x3 up to xn. We said n, it's the commodities. So x1, x2, x3 up to xn. Then we will have a formula which says T n is the function of brackets x1, x2, x3 up to xn. That is the formula we are going to use to get the total utility, that is TU. Now, the derivation of demand is based on the axiom of diminishing rational utility. Let's talk about equilibrium of a consumer. If marginal utility of X is more than its price, the consumer can increase his welfare. If the maximum utility of X is less than its price, it is normally MUX equals to PX, that is price. The consumer can increase the total satisfaction by cutting. If there are more commodities, the condition for the equilibrium to consumer is equal to the rations of marginal utility of the individual commodities to their prices. Now, we have a formula which is MUX equals to PX, MUY equals to PY, MUZ equals to PZ. So, law of diminishing marginal utility. This law, it describes a familiar and a fundamental tendency of human behavior. As a consumer consumes more and more unit of a specific commodity, the utility from the successful units goes on diminishing. The additional benefit which a person delivers or derives from an increased stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in the stock he has. The law of diminishing marginal utility is based on 3 facts, and these 3 facts are the total want of a man, unlimited, but each single want can be satisfied. We have different goods are not perfect substitutes in the satisfaction of various particular wants. We have marginal utility of money is constant given the consumer's money. Now we have okay, you could write this question that define limitations of using law of diminishing marginal utility. Define the limitations of using law of diminishing marginal utility. We have the law of equi-marginal utility. Please do not confuse the law of diminishing marginal utility and the law of equi-marginal utility. The law of equi-marginal utility is the extension of the law of diminishing marginal utility. 2 or more than 2 commodities. 2 or more than 2 commodities. It is also called law of substitution, maximum satisfaction, law of proportionate rule. So if in an exam you ask about the law of marginal utility, or someone asks you the law of substitution, or someone asks you about the law of maximum satisfaction or the law of proportionate rule, it is one and the same thing. In cardinal utility analysis, this law is started by, let's say, which says that household maximizing utility will also allocate expenditure between commodities that the utility of the last penny on each item is equal. suppose a consumer has a choice between X and Y. If X and Y both cost 5 shillings and the consumer has 5 shillings, then goods that will derive higher satisfaction will be consumed. If the same principle is applied to each successful consumer spending, the utility will be maximized when income is collected in such a way that the utility derived from 1 extra shilling of good X is equal to the utility derived from the consumption of extra shilling of Y. In that MUX, maximum utility for X over price of X, is equals to maximum utility of Y over price of Y. Now, the assumptions of a law of equi-marginal utility. We have independent utility. Maximum utility of different commodities are independent of each other and diminish with more and more purchases. Constant marginal utilities of money, that is MU of money, remains constant to the consumer as he spends more and more of it on the purchase of goods. Utility is cardinally measurable, and every consumer is rational in purchase of goods. We also have the ordinal approach. The ordinalists argue that a consumer is able to rank his preference of bundle of goods according to the utility that he drives more of his wants. They also argue that utility cannot be measured, and they come up with the preference of inefficiency curves. So we are going to talk now about consumer equilibrium. A consumer is at equilibrium when he or she maximizes utility from the concept of indifferent curve budget line, that is assumption, and that consumer is confronted by several choices which he or she must choose the combination that will maximize its utility given his or her income. A consumer is said to be at equilibrium, maximizes its utility at the point of tangency between an indifferent curve and the budget line. By superimposing his budget line, one should be able to determine at which he or she gets better satisfaction. So we are gonna now go to the next topic, that is production. The topic here. It is the process used to transform raw materials into finished goods. We have production functions. It is the relationship between the amount of inputs required, the amount of outputs that can be obtained. The main factors of production are, as we said, land, labor, capital, enterprise, and we also have technology. Land represents all natural resources such as minerals, etc. Labor is all of the, I'm not going to repeat that. I already talked about labor, capital, entrepreneur. Now maybe I would say something about technology, which is a process used in production of commodities. So it is very important to note that all the above factors of input are needed in the production of any good or service. The relative importance of each factors may vary from the type of production to the other. In production, there are some key elements that economist needs to understand so as to be able to deliver production function of a commodity. We have total product. This is the total quantity of output produced by a given firm for a given quantity of input. We also have average product, which is the product produced per unit of variable inputs employed when fixed inputs are held constant. Now, the law of diminishing marginal return. The law of diminishing marginal return. It states that as more and more variable inputs is combined with a fixed input in the short run, the marginal product of the marginal product eventually declines. For example, suppose labor is added to a fixed amount of land of machinery. The land gets more elevated, the machine gets more overrated, leading to the law to where now we're going to apply the law of diminishing marginal return. Now we also have a return to scale. Diminishing returns and marginal product refers to the response of input to an increase in a single input when other inputs are held constant. From that previous example I gave, increasing labor when all other factors of inputs are held constant will increase output by ever smaller increments. What then happens when the other inputs are increased by the same proportion? From the concept of return to scale, there are three important cases. For example, named constant return to scale, increasing return to scale, and decreasing return to scale. constant return to scale, increasing return to scale, and decreasing return to scale. We can start by defining talking about a constant return to scale. This is a case where a change in all the inputs, whether variable inputs or fixed inputs, leads to a proportional change to output. Increasing return to scale, it arises when an increase in all inputs leads to more than proportional increase in the level of output. For example, let's first talk about decreasing return to scale. It occurs when a balanced increase in input leads to a less than proportional increase in the total output. Occurs when a balanced increase in input leads to a less than proportional increase in the total output. We also have a short run and long run production. Short run, it is the period of time in which the quantity of at least one input is fixed and the quantities of other inputs can be adjusted. The long run, this is the period of time in which the quantities of all inputs can be adjusted. We have now, if we talk about the short run, it should be noted that during this period, land, equipment, machinery are usually fixed. However, the output can be altered through a change on the variable inputs that may entail capital and labor. We have, fixed costs. These are costs that are fixed in nature within a firm in a short run period. The variable costs are costs which vary with the increase of output produced. In short run, the total product usually responds to the increase to the use of variable input. However, one cannot simply add a variable into, for example, labor, just to increase a production output. That will not be like an economist. When we talk about long run production function is achieved when all the inputs are all variable in nature. Effect of a decrease is one factor input, for example, labor. The productivity of labor may be increased with technological advancement, better management, improved incentives, or training. Now, we only train labor. Or labor, that is services. So you either improve the incentives, better management, you better manage your farm, or you use technological advancement, technology that is advanced, or you train your workers, you train your labor. Now let's talk about production, isoquant and isocost, where iso means equal and quant means quantity. Isoquant, therefore, is a curve that shows combination of certain factor inputs that will produce a certain output, like, for example, labor and capital. If you consider the production of a good, say X, and suppose that only two factors of production, that is labor and capital, are employed, assuming that it is always possible to have substitute capital for labor and labor for capital continuously in the production process, then this brings out clearly the concept of isoquant. Then it is possible that a given quantity of X can be produced using different combinations of labor and capital. I'm gonna give you an example of a curve. Now, if a realtor wants to work on a business farm production, she will consider the curve above, where point A represents just one possible combination of K and L, which can be used to produce Q1 unit output. Output Q2 and Q3 can also be produced using any of the combinations of K and L, represented by points along the isoquant. Since isoquant is the contour line which joins together the different combinations of two factors of production that are just physically able to produce a given quantity of a particular good. For example, if reader is given by that curve at A uses 1 unit of labor and 3 units of capital, then she will yield Q1 units, which equal to 10 units of the output. Q2 will produce more output than Q1, and Q3 is lesser than Q2. We say that Q equals to F, that is L and K. Now, Q is a function of labor and capital. The isoquants have 3 important properties. Do not forget about this. Number 1, no two isoquants can intersect. There is no way two isoquants can intersect. If they do, that is not an isoquant. Isoquants slope downwards from left to right. They are convex to the origin. Now, an isoquant map is an alternative way of describing a production function. Each isoquant is associated with a different level of output, and the level of output increases as we move up and to the right. An isoquant shows all combination of two factors that produce a given output. Let's now finish up with discussing about Isocost. An Isocost shows all the combination of factors that cost the same to employ. Now, profit maximization using Isocost. If you want to gain profit maximization, whatever you call profit. Now, to maximize profits after production, a firm will wish to produce at the point of the highest possible isoquant and a minimum possible Isocost. I will give you an example of a curve that is with capital and labor, and then I tell you that Isocost and isoquant giving maximum output for T. An Isocost line shows the different combination of factors of production that can be employed with a given total cost. The price of a factor of production is extremely important in the firm. In order to maximize production efficiently and minimize cost, then the firm must know what its cost will be. I guess I am done for today. So if there is anywhere you did not understand, please check on notes or the other materials that you can access. Have a good day.